Yeah, man. I gotta get pretty for the stream. You need makeup? You need makeup?
I do need makeup.
All right, I'll go get some for you later. Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so tell us how you felt going into that match playing Keldeo Blastoise.
I was a little scared. Blastoise is probably one of my worst matchups. My best starter and I guess main attacker is Lander CX. So being weak to water, Keldeo only needs 3 energy to one-shot it, 3 water energy. So it's the trick is basically to get off to a quick start. I think you need to just rush him with damage as soon as possible. The main strategy I had when I saw no supporter turn 1 was just to go after the Squirtle. And if he doesn't get a Blastoise out, he can't accelerate quick enough, and Mewtwo EX can sweep. And I was also really fortunate to start Mewtwo, because if I start Landorus, then I mean, I don't think it could have mattered there, but if it was Landorus, I wouldn't have got that knockout on Squirtle turn 2.
Yeah. You see, when you played the Skyla for the plus power, did you know like he would not have? Did you feel like he needed to attach the energy that last turn for the Keldeo to stay in the game?
I kind of felt he needed to. He didn't have a supporter, as I said, and so he needed to start attacking with Keldeo as soon as possible. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure what the right play is. I mean, he was really in a tough spot without a supporter.
Yeah. I mean, without a supporter, there's not much you can do.
Yeah.
But
I think I would have done the same thing if I was in his spot. You know, there's really nothing you could do.
Yeah.
I felt like he might have had a candy. I don't know what was in his hand, but I felt like because he didn't play the supporter turn 1, he may have had the candy Blastoise in hand, but then turn 2 he didn't play a supporter, so I knew he just
you knew his hand was strong, and then you just take advantage of that. But yeah. Is this your first tournament of the season? I mean, not season, but cities.
Yeah, it's my first tournament of the season.
Cities.
No, it is my first cities. Yesterday was the closest one was either in I think like
York.
Massachusetts or like York, Pennsylvania, and it was 6 hours away. There was also a bonfire at my alma mater, so I put photos on Facebook. But there's I went to Princeton, so we beat Harvard and Yale every year. If we beat them, we get a huge bonfire, and then everyone.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys had fun.
Yeah, we had fun. It was much better than staying, 10 hours a day for cities.
Yeah. So, it looks like today's gonna be a long tournament.
But I need to go to some cities.
Yeah. I mean, you want to get the world's invite, you need points.
That's right.
Do you know how many Masters are in today?
I have no clue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many rounds do you have to play?
I also have no clue.
Oh, man. You're just looking at your mulligans, not paying attention to anything.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I also came in a little late today. They're running the Philly Marathon today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so a lot of traffic coming in. I left. I was expecting to get out like 10:50. I ended up here at 11:20. So.
Yeah. Well, you didn't get round 1 loss.
I did. Yeah, at least I didn't get round 1 loss. So.
Yeah. Now, how much testing did you do for this format?
0.
0 testing.
0. I have too much work to do. I think for Battle Roads I test a little bit after Worlds. I had a little time off, but this month has been really rough at work. So I think actually the Cities format you can afford to not test as much because the best finish limit is 4. And realistically, if you're going for the Worlds invite or if you're trying to be a really competitive player, you can go to maybe like 15 to 20 cities. Maybe with this year with the marathons all on the same weekend, you can maybe go to like 12 to 15. And let's say like on the low end 12. Like if you get 4 out of 12, that's like 33%. Of your finishes will be part of your best finish limit, theoretically. Whereas something like regionals requires a lot more testing, because you got to get it right. Like today I came in with a deck that inspired from a friend. He kind of sent me his list, and I made some modifications. Yeah, like I can afford to use today as kind of testing for that deck, for a Landorus deck, and then next week I can play something a little different. Whereas for states and regionals, I mean, you got to get it right each time, because even if you play the best deck, sometimes you're just going to whiff cut. And so you really need as many best finishes as you can.
Speaking of that, you said there's like a bunch of good decks, and in Cities metagame you don't have to test as much. How do you feel about the metagame and the viable decks that will end up doing well in these tournaments?
I think the format is actually pretty healthy. I think there's quite a lot of variety, and one thing I do like is the type of rock paper scissors formats, in the sense that like there are good decks. Like there's 2 or 3 or maybe 4 or 5 good decks, and then there's maybe 3 or 4 tier 1.5, tier 2 decks that people play. And in this type of format, where like you're in the 3 or 4 good decks, like Blastoise does a number on Landorus. Landorus handles Darkrai really well, especially because it's easily text Terrakion. And then Darkrai obviously has the Crushing Hammer version, and then the Hydreigon version, which is a setup deck, but once it gets set up, it dominates pretty much everything. So like it's pretty balanced, and so there's no one deck that's going to run away with the format. So it's pretty healthy, and even in the decks that we're playing, like I see Darkrai, Landorus, Terrakion decks teching Virizion, teching Shaman EX. I see Darkrai Roserade with Shaman EX. So like even then you can tech against your bad matchups. And Darkrai Hydreigon, I've seen versions with Keldeos and Prisms to one-shot the Landorus. And because Landorus decks, I mean, they can fit Enhance Hammer, but typically they don't play them. So it's a format where there's a couple good decks, but each deck has options to tech against other decks. You lose a little bit of consistency, but you can you can fix your matchups.
Yeah.
It's not a format where there's one or two best decks that are running away and every other deck can't survive. And there's even I've been testing some just for fun after regionals, just some fun decks. I mean, I played some games with Dusknoir and Polion. I wasn't really seriously testing that. I was just playing fun games, and then I've played some with Dusknoir, Flygon. I don't think it's really competitive at this stage yet. I don't think anyone. I haven't seen a good list that would be competitive. But I mean, I think there's going to be room for some fun decks. Maybe Excelgor has some space to come back, since Keldeo is weak to it. So I don't know. We'll see.
Very true. Now, before the round, you said you're really scared of playing the water deck. Were there any other decks coming into the tournament that you were scared to face?
Not really. I think. It's definitely Blastoise. Keldeo is the worst matchup for Landorus. I mean, it's great that Mewtwo is really a good counter to Keldeo, and I think the format has come around in that sense. That Mewtwo isn't overpowered anymore because it balances Keldeo and
keeps it in check.
And Mewtwo itself, against a Darkrai deck, it's certainly not the best attacker at all. So I think in terms of the other EXs, I think Mewtwo is really balanced in this format. It keeps Keldeo in check, but I think without Mewtwo, Keldeo is going to run away with the format.
Yeah.
So.
Do you think there's any other good not checks, but good counters to the Keldeo deck?
Yeah, I think so. Garbodor is a card that I've heard thrown around a lot. I'm not sure how good of a play it is. I mean, Garbodor loses badly to Mewtwo. I mean, maybe the Hammer Time version's viable, but I haven't tested it. I think the Virizion, the dual draw Virizion sometimes can be teched into decks. Like the Darkrai basic deck with Terrakion can easily tech a dual draw Virizion. It's almost as good of a starter as Sableye is. And it, one-shot Squirtle on turn 2. In terms of that, Shaman EX is a card that I see a lot in Hydreigon decks. Shaman EX, obviously, after taking 2 prizes, will get the one-shot. After your opponent has taken 2 prizes, you'll get the one-shot on Keldeo. So, yeah, there's some things to handle it, but I think the main thing with Keldeo, the main weakness to Blastoise Keldeo, this is what I'm speculating, is that Blastoise Keldeo has no way to replenish energy late game. So one thing that I think is it's really weak to a late game N. Let's say you get a late game N, you knock out their Keldeo, and then they only have a bench Keldeo with 1 energy. Well, if you end them down to 2 and they don't have a supporter, or if they have a Skyla, they can find the Silent, but they can't play it that turn, or all those situations, then you lose tempo so quickly. And against a deck that those big basics decks, or even Darkrai Hydreigon, late game they just attack every turn. If you lose 1 turn of tempo, then it's a huge weakness to the deck.
Get ran over.
Yeah.
Now, you brought up Garbodor. Garbodor is really one of those underrated decks that you don't see much, but it's something you have to prepare for and acknowledge exists. I agree with the fact that you have to acknowledge it exists, but sometimes I disagree that you have to prepare for every deck. Well, not prepare for it, but you can't have an auto loss and expect to.
Actually, that's actually what I mean. I think that you can have an auto loss for cities. Maybe for regionals and states, even nationals, maybe not. But for cities, like you're playing, you got to feel your metagame. And if you think 5% metagame is Garbodor, you can realistically expect to miss playing that matchup that day. Yeah. And you know what? If you play a couple of those matchups early on, then there's some luck involved in this game and how matches are paired.
So when it's tournament, you have to get lucky at some point.
Exactly. So I think, depending on how big Garbodor is in your meta, you can afford to not attack against it. Obviously, against Blastoise Keldeo, you have to know what you're doing against it. If you want to take an auto loss to it, you better have really good matchups against everything else. But against something like Garbodor that might not see as much play, I think definitely you can afford to, wing it, so to speak.
Do you think there's any other decks that are just not under the radar, but could surprise people and end up winning a city championships outside of Garbodor?
Yes, Empoleon variants. I love Empoleon. Diving Draw. I mean, I know Dark Cloak is good, and Deluge on Blastoise is good, but my favorite ability in this format is Diving Draw. Yeah, the card advantage is crazy. You discard one, you thin your deck of cards you don't need, and then you get 2 cards that you might need. And you combo that with new cards that came out, like Skyla. You know, if let's say you need a catcher. Well, now if you play 4 Skyla and 4 catcher, that's 8 cards that can find you catcher. And when you have Diving Draw, that makes it even better. Napoleon decks, not the Excelgor version, but the fighting version. They
with Landorus and Terrakion.
Yeah, with Landorus and Terrakion, they can also play Recycle because they have the space. And so, you know, if you play 3 Recycle, you get the Recycle, you find the Gold Potion, or you find the catcher or the switch or whatever you need, and you can Diving Draw immediately for that trainer card back. So I mean, I'm definitely going to do some testing over Thanksgiving break because I need some points. But that's Empoleon's where I would go for.
Now you brought up Gold Potion. That's an interesting card that people aren't really talking about much because computer searches it up. How do you feel about the card Gold Potion and how it will, if it has a place in the format?
See, Gold Potion's one of those cards. It's like you read the card and it's like really, really good in theory, and then you see computer search and you're like, you know, like I can't play Gold Potion. I think computer search in pretty much 95% of decks gives you the card advantage. Being able to search for any card in your deck and play it that turn, you know, Energy, Pokemon, and Trainer, that's really, really strong in any format, even with 1 copy in your deck. I mean, in the future formats, I can see the new Item Finder card, or Dowsing Machine as they call it in Japan, or the Scramble Switch, which allows you to switch your active Pokemon with one of your bench Pokemon and move all the energy from your active Pokemon to that new bench Pokemon you just promoted. I can see those cards, you know, giving a huge advantage in another deck in the next format. But right now, I think unless you're playing something like, I could see like a Sableye, Darkrai, Terrakion, or some type of mono fighting that doesn't really need computer search that can run a Gold Potion. But I think the main weakness of Gold Potion is that there's a card, Max Potion, that does almost the exact same thing, and most decks today don't really care about discarding the energy. Like after, like Landorus, like if I use Land Judgment, I discard all my fighting. Like I either have a double colorless attached or I have no energy attached. I can just Max Potion. So even in a deck that I think could use Gold Potion, Max Potion may just be a better alternative in the sense that it allows you to fit in computer search. Now, but I'd be really impressed with someone if they want to Cities with Gold Potion as part of their strategy.
It's an interesting card that, of course, computer search is too good to pass up in most decks. Now, of course, there was big controversy over this, but in our Boundaries Cross set, we had cards cut from the set: Ether, Verbank, Gym, Escape Rope. Is there anything else that I'm missing?
Oh God, I think that's it. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel about those cards being cut and how it will affect cities? Because people were testing with these cards, knowing, thinking they would have this for our cities metagame. Now they don't. How do you think that will affect?
So I think the card that really affects the metagame is Ether. Let me talk about the other two first, because I think Verbank City Gym will really start to shine when Poison Hypnotic Beam comes out in the next set. For those who don't know, Poison Hypnotic Beam is a trainer card, an item card that automatically poisons the defending Pokemon, and on a flip, if you get heads, you can also put them to sleep. And so Verbank City Gym adds 20 damage to the poison damage between turns, so you put 3 damage counters between turns. So if you get the Verbank combo with the Poison Hypnotic Beam, that's like plus power on steroids.
Yeah, with a chance of sleep.
Right, but I think that, you know, even though we got the Scolipede and Boundaries Crossed, it's too slow with Mewtwo in the format in almost every deck. I mean, poisoning is nice, but I don't think Verbank City affects anything too badly. Escape Rope, the War Point effect is really great for disruption. Unfortunately, I think it might make 1 or 2 decks more playable or a little better, but we already have Switch for the effect of actually getting your active out. So I think Escape Rope wasn't a huge loss. The big loss is Ether. Ether combos with Lunatone, combos with Pokedex. It's basically a card that lets you look at the top card of your deck, and if it's is it a basic energy or energy?
Basic energy.
It's a basic energy, right? If it's a basic energy card, you can attach it to any one of your Pokemon. That card just accelerates like crazy for a lot of decks. Landorus, Pokedex, Lunatone, Terrakion, Mewtwo, that would have been crazy good, in my opinion. Because I think we all know how good Dark Patch was in the last format, and on top of sorry, I guess what I mean to say is, like, Dark Patch required you to get those energy from your discard pile. So first turn you had to, Ultra Ball or Juniper to get some dark in your discard pile, then you can start accelerating. Ether, if you play Pokedex, I mean, that's...
You can just get the energy.
Or Lunatone, or some way to see the top card. It's turn 1, turn 2 energy acceleration. It's a little less reliable, but I mean, even if, God forbid you whiff the ether and you still attack turn 1 with Hammerhead. So it's not like you're losing much. It's like you get it from your deck. It just makes turn 1 deck so much faster. Do I think it's good for the format or bad for the format it was cut? I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll never know.
You can't really tell, but...
Maybe we can tell from the Japanese metagame, but I don't know too much about that.
Well,
so
yeah.
I mean, I think it's not a cut like... I think if they cut like a Blastoise or the Keldeo, people would have been a little more outraged. I feel, I've expressed my opinion on the Pokegym. I feel it was a bad decision to cut because I'm of the opinion that we should try to keep our formats consistent with Japan. And I also think, maybe they're trying to do a Call of Legends type of set in the future to make a filler set, and that's why they're saving trainers. I have no clue, but
hopefully we don't have another Call of Legends.
TBCI works in mysterious ways, and sometimes those are good, sometimes those are bad, and we have yet to see, the reasoning for this, and maybe it'll be a good thing,
Yeah. Well, I just like the way you said it. The metagame is healthy now.
Yeah.
So I mean, if it's not broken, you don't need to fix it. There's nothing wrong with the metagame right now.
Right. I don't see anything wrong with the metagame right now. I think at the end of the year, or not the end of the year, but at the end of January, we'll see a really healthy set of lists, just like last year. When Magna, Zone, Electric, Chandler, Vileplume were like the 2 best deck in formats, kind of the most wins. But then you still had ZPST, and you still had a bunch
of really good decks.
Right. Mega, Zone, Mega. You still had that Cobalion, Kyurem, Electro. Then you still had that 6 corners deck like Virizion, Terrakion, Kyurem, Mewtwo, and then you had Durant. And you had a bunch of variety, and Rush Explosion even did decently. So you have a bunch of variety in that format. And I think we'll see maybe not as much variety, but we'll definitely see. It won't be like 2 decks. Like it won't be like CMT and ZPST like last year's States format. I don't think they'll be like that at all.
Now we were talking about how the cities metagame will turn like rock paper scissors. Now we have regionals coming up after cities, which is the same format. How do you think the rock paper scissors format would affect regionals metagame?
I have no clue. At the beginning of of Battle Roads before Fall Regionals this year, I thought I really thought Darkrai Hydreigon was going to be really good before I started testing. And I thought, Darkrai Hydreigon's going to run away with it. But we turned out to have a format where Rails was really good, but Darkrai variants, whether with Terrakion or with Crushing Hammers, took some spots. Ho-Oh deck ended up coming out. So you never know at the beginning how it's going to turn out. Decks that you think could be good. Like people are thinking, Darkrai Dragon's really good again because Computer Search gives you such a huge card advantage. Skyla lets you find that rare candy or that Ultra Ball to get the turn 2 Hydreigon. But we don't know how it's going to turn out. Go ahead.
Okay. Now, for people preparing at home, like watching the stream, how would you give them advice on how to prepare for city championships? And, like, for example, just going to one or even a marathon, how would you prepare for both scenarios?
So this year I'm actually going to a marathon, so I could talk about how I'm going to prepare.
This year is your first marathon?
This year would be my first marathon. Okay. Last year I didn't go to one. I took a huge vacation from December 14th to January 17th.
Yeah, you just... Right. Yeah.
So I had to front load the cities, and thankfully I still got enough points for the invite. But I'm preparing for the marathon this year. Basically, I think you want to have beforehand a deck of each archetype built. You want to have a Blastoise Keldeo deck built. You want to have a Landorus Mewtwo deck built. You want to have a Darkrai Hydreigon built. You want to have a Crushing Hammer deck built. I don't mean like having it sleeved, but just having having a deck list written out and having tested it a little bit. The reason for that is Cities has a lot of room for metagaming, even like during a marathon, or especially during a marathon. So if you see Blastoise Keldeo's doing really well, like it's been winning two in a row, then you can play some grass techs in your deck. And you want to really have a list built, and then you can fit that grass tech in. Or maybe you even have, a Darkrai, Virizion, Shaman, Roserade thing built to play the next day. So I think between, Cities, the top cuts, and that long hours, like 9, 10 sometimes, depending on how many people there are. So you really don't have time to go back home and try to build another deck and test it. You really need to work with lists you already have. So the best advice I can give to someone preparing for a marathon is just to have everything built, have everything tested. I don't mean like put in 10, 20 games with each deck. I just mean play 1 or 2 games with each deck and understand how it works. Kind of think about the matchups a little bit and just be prepared to switch decks. Because I think if you play, I actually ran into that problem this year. In Battle Roads, I played Ray Eels for a lot for the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then everyone, when they were playing me, they knew I was playing Ray Eels. So they already knew initially what strategy they would take against me. So switching up your deck is really important, I think. Or knowing what deck to switch to, for that matter.
Now, we have, well, let's say, I would say 5 good decks right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Just at the top, people expect these decks to win, which would be Ray Eels, Blastoise Keldeo, Darkrai variants. You have Landorus variants, and then Darkrai Hydreigon. I would put that different because.
And before you continue, I want to make a point on Rails. I think a different deck that uses electric is with Tornadus EX, and I think that deck hasn't gotten enough attention. But Eels decks aren't going to be as good if Landorus is still in the format, and if you can somehow capitalize on Tornadus. Tornadus is 100 damage with 3 energy, and if you accelerate it from Ray, sorry, not from Ray, but from Eels, and then you play some max potions, I mean, it's like a tank with Eviolite. So, sorry.
Now, no, actually, onto that. Now, do you think that Tornadus actually helps the match, like puts it in your favor, or do you still think you have to work to play up that matchup against Landorus, knowing that your Dynamos are always in danger getting knocked out by Landorus?
So I think with that deck, the strategy would be just, I mean, obviously you start Dynamo then. It is what it is, but try to get the Tornadus in play, try to start using Blow Through or actually Blow Through, get that Aspertia City Gym or Sky Arrow Bridge in play. Probably Sky Arrow because you need to retreat. But I mean, it's you have a one bad match against Landorus, but it's not all bad against Blastoise Keldeo because they don't really attack turn 1 either. So I mean, you can get some Eels out and hopefully go from there.
Now, do you think this deck would be more popular than Rails, or you think Rails would still be the more popular version?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I think Eels loses something because of Landorus. Unlike Dino, which had a Dragon type it could go to, there's only one Dynamo in terms of HP and type and weakness. I mean, obviously there's three copies of it, but in essence it's the same Dynamo in the sense that it gets knocked out by Landorus. Obviously the 30 HP one that you don't want to play anymore, but it's a tough life out there for an Eels. Yeah. But I think there's still room for it in the metagame. If Landorus gets too big, I don't see it being a huge factor. But Tornadus is so good in this format. I mean, if you remember last year's Spring Battle Roads, Darkrai Tornadus decks were winning the first couple of weeks before people discovered Darkrai and Mewtwo. And I still think with more fighting in the format than there was last year, there's some room for Tornadus. Because with an Eviolite, you're subtracting 40 damage. Okay. So it's a lot. And fighting decks typically don't hit super hard. They don't hit past the 90 damage mark. Obviously, Landorus EX can get discard, you hit 150, but that still can't one-shot Tornadus even without Eviolite. Yeah, I see room for Tornadus in the metagame, definitely.
Now, around Battle Roads, and even especially during regionals, electric decks started playing the Victory Star Victini. You played this at Battle Roads, and you played it at regionals.
Yes.
Do you think Victory Star Victini still has a place in the format right now?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I was actually... Kenny actually mentioned this in the 6th prize article, Kenny Wisdom, that I brought Victini to the metagame. Actually, it was Tyler, one of my friends who lives in Washington, that told me about it, and then I played it. I might have been the first one to play in a tournament, but it definitely wasn't my idea, first of all. But when it is my baby, though. I love that card. It was so much fun playing with Vanillux. I like Victini so much. I even want to try Lipard deck, the new one with Assist, so I can reflip with Victini. I think there's less room for it in the format. The reason for it being, I think, in the last format, decks typically didn't play Switch or played one copy. And even if I was playing against a Darkrai deck that ran 2 copies of Switch, I mean, you switch twice, that's fine. You get out of paralysis. And the point of Victini is just to buy me that one turn occasionally, so I can maybe have 2 Eels and play any 3 Dynamotors to get that Dragon Burst. So I buy 1 turn, or I buy 2 turns to set up when they have a powered Darkrai. I'm not trying to paralyze every single turn for the win. So, but in this format, you have Keldeo that lets you switch in. Decks are running more Switch. I think even Darkrai Hydreigon's taking in Keldeo to rush in, and I just think that space is better served for something else today. Although I don't know, I might still try it. It's fun. It's certainly fun to play.
Yeah. See, now you mentioned Darkrai Hydreigon playing Keldeo. How do you feel about Darkrai variants taking in that Keldeo X for free retreat, having that basically infinite switch there? How do you feel about Darkrai decks playing Keldeo?
I think it's good. Keldeo is hard to one-shot. Pretty much nothing one-shots other than Shaman, or I don't know. I don't even know if there's a Grass Stage 2 that one-shots it. Probably with a flip. I mean, nothing really one-shots it except Shaman, and it's just a tank. It's a tank that gives you an advantage of free retreat. It's a searchable switch through Ultra Ball. It's a really good card to put in there. If I were playing Darkrai Dragon, I would definitely have it in there.
Okay, now in the new format, we had Blastoise introduced into the format, which is more energy acceleration. Do you think the Crushing Hammer version of Darkrai is still going to be still going to be popular, or do you think it gets weaker with the addition of Blasters into the format?
Oh, I think it's getting stronger. I think it's stronger because the one deck there that really gave Crushing Hammers, I think, that could really compete with Crushing Hammers, were decks that accelerate from the discard. So whether through Dark Patch or through Dynamotor on the Electric. Nowadays, I think the Electric is going to go down. Dark Patch is going to see some play, but I mean, I think with Blastoise, like those Blastoise and Mono fighting decks that use EXP share to accelerate, I mean, as soon as you get rid of most of their energy, then they're screwed. I mean, Blastoise has to find energy from the hand, which is, I mean, it doesn't seem like a huge deal, but it makes a difference in terms of that late game end. So I guess I would take back what I said earlier about it being stronger, but I certainly don't see it being weaker in the metagame than it was before. And I know Ryan Sabelhaus won the Philly Regionals with Darkrai Crushing Hammers deck, and I continue to see that type of deck seeing some advantage, having some advantage against some of the popular decks in the metagame.
Now onto that, Ryan in his Regionals deck, he played Darkclaw in his Darkrai deck. How do you think Darkclaw will do in this format? Now that Blastoise actually has 140 HP, it can be picked up by a Night Spear 30, and then at 110 to knock out a Blastoise. Do you think that card gets stronger now?
Yes. Darkclaw, I think, does a lot of... if you think of the math, right, for Darkclaw, the reason Ryan played it, first I want to touch upon it, is because, one, it's a double plus power, right, for any of his Pokemon. Two is it allows Sableye to 3-shot a Sigilyph. So if this Sableye player just if one of Ryan's opponents just put a Sigilyph there, Ryan's basically only option is to 9-shot it with Confuse Ray. Darkrai can't touch Sigilyph, as you know, because of Sigilyph's ability, Safeguard. So I think the reason Ryan played it is just for those couple reasons. Nowadays, Darkclaw lets you get better math on Blastoise. You know you can't damage the Squirtles with Night Spear, but you can put 30 on a Blastoise with Night Spear, and then that puts it at 110 damage. So now you can catch out that Blastoise and Night Spear it with the Darkclaw to do 110 to get the exact numbers for the knockout. Additionally, it helps you get through Eviolite. I think Eviolite's going to see a surge in popularity in the fighting decks, in Blastoise Keldeo that runs super scoop-ups. Darkclaw allows you to get through the Eviolite. Excuse me, guys. Sorry about that. Especially, I think Darkrai doesn't need Eviolite necessarily as much as it did in the last format, but obviously Terrakian's still a thing. And I don't know. It's Darklaw's getting better.
Also, back on the addition of Blastoise into the format, one more interesting question: do you think Mewtwo gets even stronger? And even then, as most people have their answers to Keldeo as Mewtwo, you think the whole Mewtwo War mechanic will come back into the format?
The Mewtwo War mechanic will definitely come back into the format. I don't think it's unhealthy, really. I think Mewtwo War it's not as skilled as I would, it's not too skill based, but I do think there's some skill in when to play down the Mewtwo, when to initiate the Mewtwo War. It's coming back to the format. I don't see it being unhealthy because Darkrai is still in the format. Darkrai is still really strong, and Darkrai is a really good check to Mewtwo. Mewtwo usually 3-shots Darkrai. That's only if Darkrai's 3 energy attached. So yeah, I think it's still.
Now, at Battle Roads and Regionals, Darkrai tracking decks started playing less Mewtwo in their decks. Do you think they should start playing more to counteract Keldeo?
You need to. I think you need more Mewtwo. I think people got away with playing one Mewtwo. I don't know how many you played, Angel.
I played one.
You played one, right? Andrew got, what, 10th?
Yeah,
10th at Regionals. I got 11th, so he's better than me, obviously.
Not quite.
I think you need 2. Darkrai Terrakion otherwise has no answer to Keldeo. Mewtwo guarantees the 2-shot, even with 2 energy, as long as Keldeo has no Eviolite and has 3 energy on it. Mewtwo prevents Keldeo from loading up 6 energy to do load up 7 energy to do 190 damage to sweep through your whole deck. One Mewtwo puts a stop to that with a plus power or with a 3rd energy. So, yeah, Mewtwo, you need to play more Mewtwo.
See, now, back on the Hammer Time version, the Crushing Hammer Darkrai deck, that doesn't play any attackers besides Sableye and Darkrai. Do you think that deck still would need to have Mewtwo now to deal with it, or do you think the Crushing Hammers would be enough to handle the Keldeo?
I don't know. I really don't know. If I knew that someone was... Oh, there you go. There's a crushing hammer right there. If I knew someone was playing... You know, I actually don't know. I don't want to speak. I don't want to speak to it because I don't want to give bad advice because I haven't tested. And I see the round's about to begin soon. But let me finish answering this question. I think it doesn't. Just from having not tested what I think. The reason is, ideally, you just want to stream crushing hammers, get rid of their energies, and disrupt them with N or something. I mean, you're trying to take off their energy, and at the same time, YouTube needs them to have more energy to hit. It seems to me a little counterintuitive to go that way. I would rather play some consistency cards over to get those crushing hammers, to get rid of those waters. Obviously, if your strategy isn't to disrupt them with the crushing hammer, then you should play some Mewtwo and Darkrai. Yeah. I think I have to get out of here.
Okay. All right, good luck.
Yeah, thank you. All right.
Thanks for joining the commentary.